When I opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed was the ceiling. It wasn't the ceiling of my bedroom. There were no faint water stains near the corner, no familiar crack that looked like the outline of a bird if you tilted your head just right. The ceiling was smooth, blindingly white, and painfully bright. I remember thinking I must have forgotten to turn the lights off. That thought alone told me something was wrong. My body felt wrong too. Heavy. Not heavy like tired, but heavy like it didn't belong to me anymore. I tried to lift my hand, just a little, but nothing happened. Panic stirred somewhere deep inside my chest. Slow and distant, like a wave that hadn't reached shore yet. A voice broke through the fog. "Ruth, can you hear me?" I wanted to answer. I wanted to say yes, to say where am I, to say please turn the lights down. But my mouth wouldn't cooperate. My tongue felt thick, useless. The voice came closer. "That's okay," the woman said gently. "Take your time. You're safe." Safe. That word felt unfamiliar. When my vision finally focused, I saw a woman in light blue scrubs leaning over me. She had kind eyes, the kind that don't rush you even when they're busy. A badge hung from her pocket, but I couldn't read it yet. "You're awake," she said softly, like she didn't want to scare me back into wherever I'd been. I blinked. Tears slid out of the corners of my eyes without permission. Not because I was sad, because something inside me had realized I wasn't gone. If you're listening to this and something inside you feels uneasy, trust that feeling. Some people start planning your ending long before you're finished living. This is Echo Lens Stories, where quiet truths finally get spoken. If this story touched something you've lived through, stay with us. Subscribe, keep listening, and remember, later they would tell me I had been in a medically induced coma for 21 days, 3 weeks, a severe reaction to a medication I'd been prescribed for years, something rare, something no one could have predicted. My blood pressure had crashed, my organs had started shutting down one by one, like lights going out in a house. "They didn't think you'd wake up," the doctor would say later, in the careful tone people use when they don't want to scare you but also don't want to lie. But in that moment, all I knew was that I was awake, and I thought my family would be waiting. The nurse, Clara, I would learn her name later, noticed my eyes searching the room. "Your children know," she said. "They'll be here soon." I relaxed a little at that. I had 2 children. Mark, my youngest, practical to a fault. And Elaine, my eldest, decisive, sharp, always convinced she knew what was best for everyone. I assumed they would be relieved. I assumed wrong. When Mark finally came in, he didn't rush to my bedside. He stood near the door first, like he was entering a room he wasn't sure he belonged in anymore. He looked settled. Not shaken, not overwhelmed, settled. "Hey, Mom," he said, forcing a smile. "You gave us a scare." I tried to speak. Only a whisper came out. "Water," I croaked. He hesitated, then reached for the cup on the tray, awkwardly holding the straw to my lips like he'd forgotten how to do this. "You're lucky," he said. "The doctor said it could have gone either way." Lucky. I swallowed painfully. Lucky wasn't the word I would have chosen. Elaine arrived later that afternoon. She walked in like she always did, and brisk, purposeful, already 10 steps ahead of the room. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her makeup flawless. She kissed my forehead lightly. "You're awake," she said, exhaling. "Good. That makes things easier." That sentence landed wrong. Easier for who? I was too weak to ask, too weak to notice the first warning sign. My hands were bare. It took me 2 days to realize what was missing. At first, I assumed it was the medication, the fog, the weakness. I'd drift in and out of sleep, waking to nurses adjusting machines, voices murmuring outside the curtain. But on the third morning, when the nurse helped me sit up a little higher, I saw my hands clearly. No ring, not my wedding ring. The thin gold band I'd worn even after the divorce, more habit than sentiment. Not my mother's bracelet, the one she'd given me the day she moved into assisted living. Not even the small chain necklace I never took off, the one Mark had given me years ago when he could barely afford groceries. I stared at my fingers, bare. "Clara," I whispered when she came back in, "my jewelry." She paused, just for a second. "I'll check," she said carefully. That pause told me everything. When Elaine came later that afternoon, I asked her directly. My rings, I said, where are they? She didn't miss a beat. We put them somewhere safe. Safe. The word felt rehearsed. Where? I asked. At home, she said, waving a hand. You don't need to worry about that right now. Focus on getting better. Something in her tone, dismissive, managerial, made my stomach tighten. The next loss revealed itself by accident. Mark was talking to someone on his phone near the window, thinking I was asleep. Yeah, the car's gone already, he said quietly. Elaine handled it. Gone. I opened my eyes. Gone. I rasped. He jumped. Oh, you're awake. Yes, I said slowly. Gone where? He glanced toward the door, like he wished Elaine were there to handle this. We sold it, he said. You weren't expected to be driving again for a long time, and we needed the money. Needed it for what? I didn't ask yet. My head was pounding, not from pain, from realization. They hadn't been waiting for me to wake up. They had been preparing for me not to. Over the next few days, pieces of the truth surfaced the way debris floats up after a storm. A realtor had been contacted. Photographs of my house had been taken. Elaine had gone through my closets to see what should be donated. My china cabinet and my grandmother's china had been set aside. Set aside for who? No one asked me. They spoke about my life like it was a storage unit they needed to clear before the lease expired. When I confronted Elaine, she sighed. Mom, you have to understand, she said. The doctors told us your body was shutting down. We were told to prepare. Prepare, not to hope, not to wait, to prepare. What if I hadn't woken up? I asked quietly. Elaine met my eyes. Then at least things would have been handled. That night, I lay awake listening to the machine's hum. And for the first time since opening my eyes, fear truly set in. Not fear of dying, fear of what my children had already decided about my life. By the end of the first week, I understood something no doctor had told me. I was not recovering into my old life. I was waking up into a version of reality my children had already rearranged without me. They didn't ask what I wanted. They didn't ask how I felt. They didn't even ask if I wanted things handled. They assumed I wouldn't be here to object. The nurses came and went. Physical therapists made notes on clipboards. Doctors spoke in cautious optimism. But my children spoke in logistics. When Elaine visited, she brought documents. Not cards, not flowers, documents. She placed them on the small rolling table beside my bed and smoothed them out like she was setting a dinner place. These are just temporary, she said, standard stuff. I stared at the top page, power of attorney, medical, financial, durable. My name was printed neatly at the top. You want me to sign these? I asked. Elaine smiled, not warmly, patiently. The way people smile at someone they think doesn't fully understand anymore. It's just in case, she said, so we don't run into delays if something happens again. Something happens again. I pushed the papers away with the little strength I had. I'm awake, I said. I'm thinking. I'm not dead. Her smile tightened. Mom, let's not make this harder than it needs to be. That sentence echoed in my head long after she left. Because I realized something chilling. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about control. That night, Clara stayed late. She was adjusting my IV when I asked her quietly, what did they tell you? About me. Her hands paused. She didn't look at me right away. They were told your chances were very low, she said carefully, but that changed. Did they know that? Yes, I swallowed. And before that, she hesitated longer this time. And they were preparing. Preparing. There was that word again. The next piece came the following afternoon. Mark was on the phone again. He had a habit of stepping just outside the curtain as if fabric were soundproof. It isn't. She's still weak, he said. No, she doesn't remember much. Elaine's handling it. I closed my eyes. She won't fight it, he added. She never does. That hurt more than anything else so far. They knew me well enough to think I'd quietly accept losing my own life. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Machines beeped softly. Someone coughed down the hall. A cart rattled past, and then I heard voices. Elaine's voice, a man's voice, the doctor, and Clara. They were standing just outside my room. She's stable, the doctor said. Improving, actually. I felt relief bloom in my chest. Then Elaine spoke. But if she declines again, she said calmly, we don't want her suffering. She wouldn't want that. My heart began to pound. What exactly are you suggesting? The doctor asked. There was a pause. Then Elaine said the words that would change everything. Wouldn't it be kinder to let her go peacefully next time? I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I didn't move. I didn't breathe louder. I didn't make a sound. Because something inside me knew, with terrifying certainty, that this conversation was not meant for my ears. Elaine continued. She's 66, she said. Her quality of life won't be the same. She wouldn't want to be kept alive by machines. Kept alive, as if I weren't lying there breathing on my own. The doctor cleared his throat. She's responding to treatment, he said. There's no ethical basis for withdrawing care. And then Clara spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was steel in it. She's not dying, Clara said. She's recovering. Elaine exhaled sharply. For now, she replied. But if she crashes again, I think we should reconsider aggressive measures. Aggressive measures. That's what my life had become. A measure, a variable, a decision to be weighed. I lay there frozen, my heart pounding so hard I was afraid the monitor would betray me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, I'm right here. I can hear you. I want to live. But something deeper held me still. Fear, not of dying, but of being powerless. Clara spoke again. As long as she has a chance, we treat her, she said firmly. That's not negotiable. Silence followed, then of footsteps. They walked away. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my body trembling. My own daughter had tried to give the doctors permission to let me die. Not because I was suffering, not because I asked, but because my existence complicated her plans. That night, Clara came in quietly. She checked my vitals, adjusted the blanket, lowered the lights. You're not asleep, she said softly. No, I whispered. She met my eyes. I heard everything, I said. She nodded once. I know. Tears slid down my face. Slow, silent. She wanted me gone, I whispered. Clara leaned closer. She wanted control, she corrected gently. That's not the same thing. Why didn't they stop treatment? I asked. Because someone pushed back, she said. You. Yes. I looked at her, really looked at her, and understood something profound. I was alive because one woman refused to see me as finished. She can't do that again, I said. Can she? Clara shook her head. Not while I'm here. That was the moment something shifted inside me. I was no longer just recovering, I was surviving. And survival, I realized, wasn't just about the body. It was about reclaiming your right to exist. The hospital discharged me on a Thursday. I remember because the sky outside my window was the color of dirty dishwater, winter light, weak and indifferent, and because Mark showed up with a smile that didn't belong on anyone's face when their mother was leaving a hospital bed. He rolled my suitcase like we were checking out of a hotel. Home, he said brightly. Finally. Elaine came an hour later, carrying a tote bag and a folder tucked under her arm. Of course she did. Elaine never walked into a room without something official in her hands. Clara helped me into a wheelchair. Her fingers brushed my shoulder once, quick, steadying, the kind of touch that says, I'm here. You're not alone. And then, just like that, I was pushed through the hospital doors into cold air that smelled like car exhaust and wet pavement. I had spent 3 weeks unconscious, and yet the world hadn't paused for me. Cars kept honking, people kept walking, my children kept planning. They loaded me into Mark's SUV like a fragile package. The seatbelt felt too tight across my chest. My legs were stiff. My mouth tasted like metal. As the car pulled away, I saw Clara standing by the entrance, watching us go. She raised her hand in a small wave, and for a second, I wanted to tell Mark to stop the car, to let me go back inside, because the hospital suddenly felt safer than whatever waited at the end of this ride. But I said nothing, because I needed to see it. I needed to know exactly what they'd done. The drive felt longer than it should have. I stared out the window at bare trees and gray houses and people bundled in coats, living normal lives while mine had been quietly dismantled. When we finally turned onto my street, my stomach tightened. My little blue house sat there the way it always had, modest, clean, familiar. But something was wrong. There was a large metal lockbox attached to the railing near the front door, like the kind realtors use. I blinked hard. Maybe it belonged to the neighbor. Maybe. Then I saw the sign. Not in the yard. They were too smart to put it there yet, but leaning against the porch, half hidden behind a potted plant. A folded sign face down. The edge of it was visible, and I didn't need to read it to know what it was. Elaine got out first. She walked ahead as if she owned the place. Mark opened my door. "Careful," he said. "The way you speak to someone you're afraid will break." I stood slowly, gripping the car door, my legs shaking. When I looked up, I froze. My front porch bench, the one my late husband built with his own hands, was gone. The wind chimes were gone, and my welcome mat, the one that said "Bless this home" in faded cursive, had been replaced with something plain and new, a realtor mat. Elaine turned toward me, smiling tightly. "We made a few updates," she said. "Just little things." "Updates," I repeated. Mark cleared his throat. "Mom, don't get upset," he said. "It's just, you were gone for weeks. We had to—" "Hush," Elaine snapped, then softened her voice and looked at me as if I were delicate. "We thought it would help," she said. "Help what?" "Help the house sell." That thought landed so heavily in my chest I had to grip the porch railing to steady myself. Inside, it was worse. My living room looked stage. The throw pillows I'd had for years were gone. The family photos on the mantel were gone. Even the little ceramic birds on the windowsill, gone. In their place was something generic, beige, neutral, empty. It wasn't my home. It was a product, an asset. Mark carried my suitcase down the hall. "We set up your room," he said. "My room," as if the rest of the house was no longer mine. Elaine walked toward the kitchen and began opening cabinets, like she was checking inventory. I stood in the entryway, my heart thumping. "What did you do?" I asked quietly. Elaine turned. "Ruth," she said, as if she were explaining something to a child. "We didn't know if you were coming back. We had to be prepared." Prepared. That word again. I took a slow breath, tasting iron. "Prepared for what?" I asked. Elaine's eyes flickered to Mark. Mark's face went pale. "For the expenses," he said. "The bills, the care you might need. We thought selling the house would—" "Stop," I whispered. I walked toward the mantel. The space where my husband's photo used to sit was bare. I ran my fingers along the wood and felt a faint rectangle of dust. The ghost of the frame. They'd erased him too. I turned back slowly. "My jewelry box," I said. "Where is it?" Mark hesitated. Elaine answered quickly. "We moved it somewhere safe." "Where?" Elaine smiled again, patient, tight. "We'll talk about that later." "No." That wasn't an answer. "That jewelry box," I said, forcing my voice steady. "It has my wedding ring, my mother's ring, my grandmother's pearls. Where is it?" Mark rubbed his face. "Mom, calm down." "Where," I repeated, "is my jewelry?" Elaine's smile vanished. "In my car," she said. "For now." "For now," I echoed. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Elaine went on, voice crisp. "We didn't take anything for ourselves. We simply distributed items for safekeeping. Your car, for example, was too expensive to keep insured if something happened." My throat tightened. "My car." Mark's eyes darted away. Elaine said it like she was proud. "We sold it." The room swayed slightly. I reached for the back of a chair. "You sold my car," I repeated slowly. "You weren't using it," Elaine said, "and it was sitting there, depreciating. We got a fair price." "A fair price," I whispered. This was my life, my independence, my last little piece of control. Gone. I looked at Mark. "You let her do that?" Mark's voice cracked. "We thought you weren't coming back, Mom." But he wouldn't meet my eyes when he said it, because that was a lie. They had known I was improving. Clara had told me they weren't preparing for grief, they were preparing for gain. I stood there in my own living room and realized something that made my skin go cold. This wasn't careless. This was coordinated. And if I didn't take control right now, they would finish what they started. They would sell my house, drain what was left, and tell themselves they were being responsible. I looked at Elaine. "Give me my phone," I said. Elaine blinked. "What?" "My phone." I repeated. Right now. Mark frowned. Mom, you shouldn't stress. Give, I said, my voice firmer. Me, my phone. Elaine's lips pressed into a thin line, but she reached into her tote bag and handed it to me. My old phone. When I turned it on, I saw the truth immediately. Dozens of missed calls. Not from my children, from my bank, from my insurance, from a realtor, from unknown numbers. And then, right there, my email notifications. A subject line that nearly stopped my heart. Listing agreement and pending signatures. I looked up at Elaine. You were going to list my house, I said softly. Elaine didn't deny it. She simply shrugged. We still can, she said. If you're going to need long-term care, Ruth, this is the practical step. Practical. That's what they call it when they're taking your life apart while you're still breathing. I stared at her, and in that moment, I made a decision. I would not argue. I would not plead. I would not cry. I would do the one thing they did not expect. I would fight like a woman who finally understands the enemy is inside the family. That night, they left me in my bedroom like a finished task. Mark went back to his busy life. Elaine stayed in the guest room, as if she were the caretaker now. I lay awake in the dark, listening to the house settle. My house. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a place under siege. At 2:13 a.m., I got out of bed. My body was weak, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I found my little desk in the corner of the room and saw that even it had been altered. A neat stack of papers, a pen placed perfectly on top. Elaine's fingerprints were all over my life. I picked up the stack and flipped through it. Medical power of attorney, financial power of attorney, advance directives. Some pages were unsigned. Some pages, my stomach dropped. Some pages had signatures that looked like mine but weren't. The letters were too smooth, too confident, as if someone had tried to imitate my hand. A cold wave swept through me. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. They had forged me, or tried to. I stared at those pages until my eyes burned. If those documents became official, they could do anything. They could sell the house, move my money, change my care plan, make me incapable on paper. And once that happens to you at my age, you become a file, a problem, a situation. People stop asking what you want because legally, you no longer get to want anything. At 6 a.m., I heard footsteps. Elaine was up early, moving around the kitchen. I forced myself to stay calm. A confrontation in the dark would get me nowhere. I needed evidence, I needed allies, and I needed a lawyer. When the sun finally rose, I walked slowly into the kitchen. Elaine was making coffee like she lived there. Morning, she said brightly. I looked at her and almost laughed. It was the confidence that terrified me, the certainty that she had already won. I sat down carefully at the table. My bank, I said casually. Did you call them? Elaine didn't blink. Yes, they needed to know about your condition. And my insurance? Yes. And a realtor? She poured coffee into a mug. Ruth, she said calmly, it's responsible. Responsible, I repeated. Mark shuffled in, eyes puffy. Can we not do this today? He groaned. Elaine shot him a look. I smiled slightly, a controlled smile, because I realized something. Elaine's weakness wasn't her cruelty, it was her arrogance. She believed I wouldn't fight back. She believed I was too tired, too old, too grateful to be alive, and she was wrong. I want my jewelry, I said in today. Elaine sipped coffee. I told you it's safe. No, I said quietly, it is mine. Mark sat down, rubbing his forehead. Mom, just relax. Elaine's trying to help. I turned to him. You sold my car, I said. Where's the money? Mark swallowed. In an account, Elaine answered quickly. What account? Elaine's face tightened. A family holding account. The words made my skin crawl. Family holding account. Translation, money they could control. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice soft. I want the account number, I said. Elaine laughed once. A short, disbelieving sound. Oh, Ruth, she said. You don't need to worry about that. We're handling it. Handling it. That's how the elderly get robbed in daylight. I sat back. Okay, I said. Elaine blinked, surprised by my calmness. Okay? Yes, I said evenly. Handle it. Mark exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. Elaine's shoulders relaxed, and that was the moment I knew my plan would work, because they thought I'd surrendered. But what I was actually doing was buying time. After breakfast, Elaine took a phone call in the hallway. I waited until I heard her voice drift toward the front of the house. Then I went to the living room and searched the drawers. My hands shook, but I moved methodically. I found what I needed in the second drawer of the side table: a business card, a real estate agent's card, and tucked behind it, a copy of a key. Not my key, a lockbox key. My throat went dry. They already had the lockbox. They already had access. I took the card and slipped it into my robe pocket. Then I returned the key exactly where it was. No confrontation, no warning. At 11:07 a.m., when Elaine went to run errands, I took my phone into my bedroom, shut the door, and called Clara. My fingers hesitated over her number. I had no right to drag her into my family's mess. But then I remembered her voice outside my room. She's not dying. She's recovering. I pressed call. She answered on the second ring. Ruth. I exhaled shakily. It's happening, I whispered. Everything you probably feared. Clara's voice sharpened instantly. What did they do? They sold my car, I said. They staged my house. They're preparing to list it. I found paperwork that looks forged. A pause. Then Clara said quietly, do not sign anything. Not one page. I won't. And Ruth, she added, you need a lawyer today, not next week. I don't even know where to start, I whispered. Yes, you do, she said. You're going to start with protecting yourself. Then she gave me a name. A local attorney who handled elder financial abuse. When she said the words elder financial abuse, my stomach turned. Because I realized how bad it sounded out loud, how official it was, how real. When the call ended, I sat on the bed and stared at my hands. I used to think betrayal looked like shouting, like slammed doors, like cruel words. But betrayal, I was learning, can also look like coffee on the table, while someone quietly sells your life out from under you. And that was when I understood something else. Elaine hadn't just prepared. Elaine had started the funeral before I was dead, and she was going to finish it unless I stopped her. The attorney's office smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. Not intimidating, not grand. Just quiet, solid, safe. Which is exactly what I needed. His name was Daniel Harper, mid-50s, calm voice, no wasted words. He didn't interrupt while I talked. He let me go slowly, from the coma to the hospital conversations to the missing jewelry, the sold car, the forged paperwork. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. Ruth, he said, this isn't family conflict. I swallowed. This is elder financial exploitation. The words landed hard, not because I didn't suspect it, but because hearing it out loud stripped away every excuse I'd been making for them. They said they were preparing, I whispered. That's the most common phrase, Daniel said, right before someone loses everything. He slid a legal pad across the desk. Let me ask you something very important, he said. Did you ever give Elaine permission to sell your car? No. Did you ever authorize her to handle your finances? No. Did you ever sign power of attorney? No. He nodded once. Then we're acting today. That word today felt like oxygen. Daniel explained it simply. First, emergency injunction. Second, revoke all unauthorized actions. Third, freeze accounts. Fourth, document medical interference. I flinched at that last one. Medical interference? He looked me straight in the eye. Anyone who pressures doctors to withhold care for financial benefit crosses into criminal territory. My hands trembled. She wanted me to die, I said. Daniel didn't soften it. Yes, he replied, and that matters. That afternoon, he sent formal notices to the realtor, to the bank, to the insurance company, to Elaine. When I returned home that evening, Elaine was waiting, sitting at my kitchen table, my kitchen table. Her posture was stiff, controlled, angry. Where were you? She asked. I took off my coat slowly. With someone who knows the law, I said. Her face tightened. You're overreacting, she snapped. We were trying to help you. I've retained legal counsel, I said evenly. The room went quiet. Mark looked up from the couch, panic flickering across his face. Elaine stood abruptly. "You have no proof," she said sharply. I met her eyes. "I have hospital witnesses," I said, "financial records, and attempted forged documents." For the first time I saw it. Fear, not concern, not guilt. Fear. "You wouldn't do this to your own daughter," she said, her voice dropping. "After everything." I tilted my head slightly. "You already did this to your own mother." She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. And in a way, she hadn't. The woman who begged, the woman who trusted, the woman who stayed quiet, she was gone. Daniel's letter arrived the next morning. Elaine read it. Standing in the hallway, her hands shook. Mark sat down hard. "She can't touch anything," he whispered. "No," I said, "she can't." That night, Elaine packed. Not dramatically, efficiently, like someone retreating from a battlefield they miscalculated. At the door, she turned. "You'll regret this," she said. "When you're alone." I looked past her. "I was alone," I said. "You just didn't care." The door closed, and for the first time since I woke up, the house was quiet. Recovery is strange. It doesn't come all at once. It comes in moments. Like the first morning I made my own coffee again. Like the day I drove a rental car down my street and felt capable. Like the afternoon Clara came to visit. She didn't bring flowers. She brought soup, homemade, still warm. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table Elaine once claimed as hers. "I wasn't sure if I should come," Clara said gently. "I'm glad you did," I replied. I told her everything, the lawyer, the injunction, Elaine leaving. Clara listened quietly, her hands wrapped around her mug. "I kept thinking about something," she said finally. "What?" "You survived," she said. "Not just medically, you fought." I smiled faintly. "I didn't know I had it in me." "You did," she said. "You just needed someone to stand beside you." That night, I called Daniel again. "I want to update my will," I said. There was a pause. "Of course," he replied. "Who are we including?" I thought of Mark, quiet, complicit, weak. I thought of Elaine, calculating, impatient, dangerous. And then I thought of the woman who argued with doctors when my voice was silent. "Clara," I said. Daniel didn't sound surprised. "Entirely." "Yes." A week later, the paperwork was signed. Legally airtight, clear, unchallengeable. Clara didn't know yet. I invited her over again. We sat on the porch this time. Winter sun, cold air, steam rising from our mugs. "I did something," I said. She looked concerned. "I changed my will." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "I left everything to you." She went completely still. "Ruth, no." "Yes," I said calmly. "You saved my life. You treated me like a human being when others treated me like an obstacle." Tears filled her eyes. "I just did my job," she whispered. "No," I said. "You did what my family wouldn't." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "You don't owe me anything." "I owe myself," I replied, "and this is my choice." She reached across the table and held my hand. And in that moment, I felt something settle. Peace. Not because I'd won, but because I'd chosen. Elaine never came back. Mark called once. I didn't answer. Some people mourn you before you're gone. Pay attention to who they are, because survival doesn't always look like recovery. Sometimes it looks like clarity. Your life is not a convenience, and it is never too late to take it back.